Hey, welcome to the 2024 Jewel School Workshops. I'm Laura. Thank you guys for joining me here today. I'm so excited to be here with you guys, and I'm so excited for another year of incredible workshops for you guys. We have so many amazing artists, so much talent here, and so much to share with you guys, and I'm so excited that you get to join in with us. Today, we are making one of my favorite things to make of all time, wacky wrap earrings. It's one of the first things I learned when I learned how to make jewelry, and it is something that I have just really had so much fun with and expanded on, and I use it so often that people are probably like, Laura's making wacky wrap earrings again? But it's something that I was really excited to share with you guys because it's got a lot of different techniques in it. If you're a beginner and you're just learning how to make jewelry, this is going to be a really great project for you because we're going to learn some foundational things, and we're also going to learn some cool, interesting new things as well. So I am looking forward to going through this with you guys. Give you a little background about me. I am from Knoxville. I've lived here for most of my life. I started making jewelry when I was about 15. I got a job at Susan's jewelry making store, and if you've been watching Jewel School for a while, you know who Susan is, and you know that she used to have a little bead store here in Knoxville. And I got a job there when I was 15 and fell in love with making jewelry, and I never looked back, and it has been something that has stuck with me so far throughout the rest of my life, and it's something that I think that I'll continue to do forever. I ended up from Susan's store. I went on to go to college at Savannah College of Art and Design, where I studied metals and jewelry, and one of the most formative experiences of my life. I learned so much there. I met so many cool people, just a really incredible experience, but I really got to delve deeper into the world of making jewelry and hone my skills and learn new skills, learn things that I never thought that I would be able to do. And so I'm so excited to be able to bring some of that expertise with you here to you guys. From SCAD, I moved to New York, where I worked for David Yurman as a jewelry designer for about 5 years. I was on the men's jewelry design team, so I designed men's jewelry, which was really cool. I learned a lot about techniques and materials, and just different things about jewelry design that, you know, we don't necessarily think about sometimes when we're designing women's jewelry. So it was a really cool, broadening experience for me. And so then I have been back in Knoxville, and I've been at JTV working with Jewel School for almost 2 years now, which has just been really an incredible experience. Again, not something I thought I would ever do, but it's something that I love. And I'm back with Susan and Katie, who were both very important in my early years of making jewelry. And I always say that if it wasn't for Susan, I don't think, you know, I obviously would never have learned how to make jewelry. So it's cool to be back here with those two lovely ladies, and it's awesome to be here with you guys. So again, thank you for joining me. Let's talk about our wacky wrap earrings. So today we are using these really incredible tiger's eye nuggets, and if you haven't explored using gemstone nuggets, it's something that I really want you to get excited about. Gemstone nuggets are so cool, so versatile, and they're really unique and interesting, and there's just so much that you can do with them. So we're gonna make a pair of earrings similar to this one that you're looking at on the screen right now. We have got so many cool nuggets at JTV, and one of my favorites in the different sets that we have is this tiger's eye, just because of the way that that cat's eye striping looks in these nuggets, and just kind of the natural vibe that it gives off. And we're also going to use this really cool wire. It's called Colorcraft wire, and we have a huge set of Colorcraft wire here at JTV, and it's got so many colors. It's got pink and purple and blue, and it's got these cool brown tones and kind of your neutral tones. So we're going to use this brown wire that comes in that set. And this, it's like I said, it was one of the first things that I learned how to make. You know, you learn how to do crimping and make bracelets and necklaces with your stringing wire. You learn how to crimp, and then I learned how to make loops to make earrings and things like that. And then I learned wacky wrapping, which has been just a fun thing that I've expanded. I don't know if you guys can see my bracelets, but it's the same technique that I've carried over into a bracelet style, which has just been really fun, and I'll explain more about that as we get into the demo. But it's like I said, it's kind of got some foundational techniques, and it's got some more advanced techniques, and there's just a lot that you can do with it once you get the feel for it and once you get the hang of it. So I'm excited to explore that with you guys. As far as our tools that we're going to be using the trifecta, dun, da, 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 which is our round nose pliers, chain nose pliers, and flush cutters. And those are three of them, we call them the trifecta because it's the three most commonly used tools in jewelry making. And if you're going to invest in tools, you need to invest in those three. If you're going to buy really super expensive, high quality tools, I would make it those three tools. And we have incredible tools. That's one of the best things that we do here at Jewel School is tools. And then we're going to be using a 6-step bail shaping plier. And if you don't have one of these, you need one of these in your life. It is great for making different size loops and different size bails. It's got these 6 different steps on it. They're all different sizes, and you can make really uniform loops, and you can make multiples of things, which is we're going to use that to make our ear wires today. And I'm going to show you guys how to make really consistent, simple French hook ear wires using that plier. And again, we're using our Tiger's Eye Nuggets. One of the cool things about these nugget strands is the variety of shapes and sizes that you get in a strand. You know, there you've got kind of your softer, your more rounded pieces, and then you've got kind of your harder edge pieces, your funkier shapes. And then you've got some smaller ones in there too. You've got these like flat little pieces. There's just so many cool things in these strands. It's like the whole strand, it's like you have to sit and explore kind of the whole strand because there's so much going on in it. But the nugget strands to me are a good place to spend money on because you get a lot of bang for your buck because you get so many shapes and sizes and there's so much that you can do with them. Again, we're using our Colorcraft wire and we're using this brown tone in the Colorcraft wire. All of them in the set are 20 gauge, which is a really great size. It's kind of a foundational basic size when it comes to different wire gauges. If you're not familiar with wire gauges are, it's a way that we kind of measure and keep track of the size or the thickness of a wire. And so the higher the number, it's backwards. The higher the number, the smaller the wire, the thinner the wire. So you've got your 28 and 30 gauges, which are really thin. They're like, almost like thread, getting pretty close to thread-like. And then you've got your 18s, you've got 16, 14, 12 gauge, like really, really thick, heavy duty wires that take some practice to work with. And then you've got your like 20, 22, and 24, which are kind of your middle of the road gauges, pretty medium size, medium temper, not too difficult to work with. So that's why I love this set comes in a 20 gauge because it's pretty universal in that you can use it for all kinds of stuff. So that is what we're gonna be using to get started. All right, you guys ready? Let's get going. For the earring, I liked to do, I've done a couple different varieties, but I like a tapered style for this earring. So I went with some bigger, chunkier Tiger's Eye up top, and then I tapered down to your smaller gauges or smaller sizes down here at the bottom. So I just wanted I wanted there to be some directionality to the earring, and one way to do that is to taper down in your size. It kind of draws your eye down the earring, so it keeps you interested in looking at the earring if you're, following the size down along the earring. So I kind of laid these out for you guys, kind of starting with some bigger sizes up top and then tapering down. It's not a huge taper, it's a slight taper, but it's just enough to be noticeable. So I've got some, fatter guys up top, and then down to these little donut guys down here at the bottom. So that is, and I've got 5 per earring. As you can see in my examples, I've done all kinds of different amounts, quantities. These are really cool because I made a loop down here at the bottom, this black pair. There's a loop down there at the bottom, and then I created a cluster of beads of nuggets down there at the bottom. So there's like, when I say that you can really expand on this technique, I mean you can really do a lot with it. So pay attention, buckle up, because this is something that you're gonna wanna remember. And luckily for you, you can have this video for forever, so you can go back and reference it as many times as you want. Let's get started. For our wire, we are going to cut about 1.5 feet to 2 feet of wire. Maybe I'm gonna do about 1.5 feet. I'm not a big measurer. If you watch my shows, my streaming shows, you know that I am an eyeballer, if you will, and I just tend to eyeball things. Unless I know that it's gotta be a really precise measurement, then I will measure, but for the most part, I eyeball things. So I've got about 1.5 feet to 2 feet of wire here, and we're gonna start from the bottom up. So most of the time with earrings, you work from the top down, but with this pair, with this style, we're gonna go from the bottom up. So we're gonna grab our smallest piece of tiger's eye here, and we're gonna string it onto our wire. And we're gonna slide it about 1/4 to 2/3 of the way down the wire. So it's not gonna be in the middle, because I need all this excess wire to do my wacky wrapping with. And this is gonna be the part of the wire that we string the rest of our beads on, and it's kind of gonna be the core of the earring. This wire is gonna go up through all the beads, and the longer side is gonna go around the beads. So with our bead in place, I want to take this longer piece of wire and I'm gonna wrap it up around the bottom of my bead here. And I like to keep it, really flush, close next to the bead as much as I can. Kind of following the contour of the bead, the edge. And now I'm just gonna take this longer piece of wire and we're gonna wrap it 2 times. You can do 3 times, you can do 4 times, you can do as much as you want, but for this earring, I picked two wraps here. So we're gonna wrap it twice around our core wire. So here we are. We've got our core wire that's coming straight up out of our bead, and we've got our wrapping wire, which is wrapped around the core wire and wrapped around our bead. And now we're gonna take our next size bead, the next size up, and we're gonna drop it down onto our core wire here. Like that. And then again, we're going to come up and around the bead with our wrapping wire. And then we're gonna twist that wire around the core. One trick that I have learned with doing this that has gotten me a lot tighter wraps, and it's a lot easier. Instead of holding my bead still and actually wrapping the wire like that, I will hold my wrapping wire and I will twist my beads so that, and I'll go slower next time and I'll show you what I mean, but that, for whatever reason, has helped me to really tighten up my wraps, and it's just been a lot easier on my hands. So there we are with our second bead, and we're ready to drop our third one down on there. And see how we're kind of building up in size just a little bit. It's not too drastic, but we are increasing, or we're getting bigger as we're going up. Okay, so I'm gonna pull my wire up and around my bead. And just make sure I've got it nice and flush up against my bead. And see, I'm gonna hold this, I'm gonna hold my wrapping wire here, then I'm gonna grab my bead and I'm gonna grab my beads, and then I'm gonna turn my beads. See how my other hand is holding still and it's just kind of guiding that wire as it's wrapping. So it's kind of like the opposite, I guess, of what you would think that you would do. You would think that you would use this hand to wrap around with your bead, but really we're holding this still and we're twisting with this hand. And that's giving us that really tight wrap down there at the bottom. And this is something that has taken me years to figure out. I spent years banging my head against the wall, figuring out why my beads were real loose in my wacky wraps. And that's one thing that we want to avoid, is having a lot of looseness in our wacky wraps, for several reasons. One, it can look messier If you've got big gaps, or you've got your wire showing through, that interior core wire, if you can see that wire too much, it can look a little messy. But also when you've got too much room in between your beads, and this is something that I talk about all the time in all of my shows, and every demo I do, I talk about making sure that we're removing as much slack or as much excess wire as we can, because it leads to a breakdown in your piece. If you've got room for your wire to bend back and forth and move too much, eventually over time that bending is going to cause your wire to break. So we want to eliminate as much movement in our beads as possible. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes they're going to move a little bit. And if you can see, my bottom bead is dangling a little bit. It's got a little movement to it. And that's okay. But my other ones are pretty stable. Like, they really cannot move a lot, and you can't see that, you really can't see much of that core internal wire. And so that's gonna help us build a piece that can withstand the test of time. And that's one of the crucial things when you're learning how to make jewelry and making jewelry, is that you're making jewelry that is made to last. Because if you're, especially if you sell your jewelry, or even if you're giving it as gifts, you want to give people something or sell something to someone that is, gonna last them a lifetime. They're not gonna come back to you in a month or two and say that it broke. So that's one thing that I try to help with, is helping you guys make pieces that are gonna last. So we are on our fourth here now, and we're gonna again pull our wire up here around our bead and get it nice and tight. And then I'm holding my wrapping wire still, and I'm just like pressing down kind of with my finger on the bead, and I'm rotating my other hand and getting 2 wraps. And see how tight that is, like how much that wire contours the edge of the bead. And now we've got one more. And again, we are gonna come up with our wire around our bead. Make sure it's pulled really tight. And then again, we're gonna give this a twist like this. And so we are done with our wacky wrap section. Now, I'm gonna teach you guys, I'm gonna show you guys how you can make it even wackier if you want to. You don't have to, but I sometimes will go back down with my wire and do another set of wraps. So we will do that today. I'll just show you guys real quickly. So instead of cutting this off now, I'm gonna come back down my bead, and we're gonna go down with it. Again, making sure that we're getting it nice and tight. And this is kind of gonna bulk up that section in the middle, because you're gonna have wraps on top of wraps. But we're gonna come down again around our next bead here. Give it a couple wraps, come down again. Give it a couple wraps, and then we're gonna come down again. Wrap it a couple times. And then with this, unless you wanted to go back up again, you can do a 3rd row of wackiness, or you can stop it at 2. If you're gonna stop it at 2, you're just gonna cut your wire off here. If you're gonna go back up again, you're gonna come around your bottom bead and then wrap back up your earring like we did the first pass. But I'm just gonna stick with 2 right now. We're gonna trim this off. With our flush cutters. And I talked about our tools and how important our tools are. Flush cutters are arguably one of the most important tools that you're gonna have, and a high quality pair of flush cutters is invaluable. This set by Bead of pliers is called Plier 61, and it is hands down the best flush cutter I've ever used. And everyone laughs at me because I have a tendency to be really, really tough on my pliers, on all pliers. If they want to know if a plier can be broken, they give it to me, and chances are I will figure out a way to break it. Not necessarily on purpose, but I cannot hurt these pliers unless you know, which is one thing that I have not done, is try to cut steel with them. You should not cut steel with your flush cutters. There's special cutters for steel, but if you really want to get a really nice close flush cut, you have got to have a really high quality pair of flush cutters, and that's going to save you so much time and headache. There is nothing more frustrating to me than getting to a point where I need to cut a wire and having a dull pair of pliers that either I can't get to cut, and I have got to cut several times. Then you end up with this kind of gnarled looking little nub on the end of your wire that is, one, doesn't look great, and two, is going to catch on you and scratch you, and it's going to be difficult to hide. But two, if you want to be able to get down into really tight spaces, you need a flush cutter that has a really sharp tip on it. The point of this is, in some flush cutters you'll get, the very tip of it doesn't cut very well. That tip right there. So one of the great things about this plier is that all the way down to the very end of the wire, it's super sharp. So you can get in these little crevices, like I've got this plier stuck way down inside my earring kind of, and I can clip once and it's done, And I don't have to try to rearrange my earring to be able to cut my wire. So another thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna go in with our chain nose pliers, another crucial tool for us. And I'm just gonna make sure, I'm just gonna tuck that tail in real nicely so that it's not sticking out at all. And now we are ready to make our loop up here at the top. One of the things I love about this earring is just the little bit of metal, the pops of metal that you see as you're looking at the earring, when just the little hint of the metallic as the wire travels down the earring, I think gives it some personality, and again keeps you interested in looking at it, and it's kind of eye-catching. So that's one of the things I love about this wacky wrap style, is that you get that metal makes magic, like Susan always says. So next we are going to make our loop up here at the top, and we're going to use our round nose pliers. Another very, very important tool when you're making jewelry is a nice high quality pair of really sturdy round nose pliers. And of all the pliers that need to be super sturdy, your round nose pliers really need to be very sturdy. I've worked with round nose pliers that are not super sturdy, and the tube, the tips on them will kind of bypass each other sometimes if it's not sturdy enough, and that can really mess up your loop, your ability to make a loop and make a nice high quality loops. But these are great. All the round nose pliers that we have here at Jewel School are great quality. So that's my round nose plier spiel. All right, so we're gonna grab up here at the top of that coil that we made with our round nose pliers, and I'm just coming, a couple millimeters down into my plier with my wire. You can make a bigger loop if you want. This is kind of my sweet spot where I make my wires, and that's just something I've learned over time, that that I can kind of put my wire in there and know it's in the right spot. I used to mark my pliers with Sharpie so that I was making the same loops, same size loops every time. So if you need to do that, feel free to take a second, and if you have a Sharpie, just make a little mark on your pliers right at that spot, and then your next earring you'll be able to make a loop that's exactly the same size. So the way I make my loops, and everybody makes their loops differently, this is the way I was taught by Susan, and this is the way I've always done it. I think it makes the best looking loops. So I've grabbed with my pliers, and then I'm gonna press forward away from me with my wire. And it's gonna be bent at kind of a 90-degree angle. And And then I'm gonna grab a hold of my earring here, and I'm gonna let go of my pliers just a little bit and rotate them up on top of that bend. So they're now up on the top part of my wire section there. Now holding my beads in my hand, I'm gonna take my pliers and I'm just gonna press them down into my finger, this finger. See how I made a little indent in my finger? And that's gonna give me that little neck. That's how we're gonna make kind of the nape of the neck. You'll see what I'm talking about when we roll this all the way around. Normally I wouldn't let my pliers go. I would keep them in place, but I wanted to show you guys that. So then we're gonna roll our hand back towards us until this wire is pointing directly at us. It's pointing at my chest now. And then I'm gonna go with my hand and I'm gonna pull my wire around the bottom of my plier. And so now we've got the beginnings of a closed loop. And let me show you guys what I was talking about when I was talking about making the nape of the neck. If you can imagine that this little guy is a head, somebody's head, right there. You see how it like bends backwards and then comes around like the nape of a neck? That really helps to create aligned loops that are centered at the top of your earring and they're not leaning over to the side. One thing that I don't want to have to do is go back and straighten my loops up and make them all look uniform. So if I create that bend, before I'm pulling my wire around into a circle, that's gonna align my loop up in the center of my earring and it's gonna keep it standing up straight. Every once in a while I gotta go back and straighten my loops up, but for the most part, when I make a loop like this, when I'm making a closed loop, it's standing straight up and down and it's centered when I'm finished because we've made that little crook thing. So next we are going to go in with our chain nose pliers and I'm just gonna grab a hold of that loop that I made just to stabilize it. And this is like two purposes. One, I'm able to hold on to my earring, but I'm also kind of stabilizing the loop that I just made, and whatever I do now is not gonna mess up the shape of that loop because it's clamped inside my pliers. So then I'm just gonna come around here with my wire and give myself a couple wraps. And then we will go in with our flush cutters and we'll just trim this wire off here again with our really great quality flush cutters. And we can get a nice close cut. And then I'm just gonna go in and tuck that little tail in there. So there we go, we've got our loop up there at the top. And see, it's standing pretty straight up. It's maybe it's got a little lean to it, but that's all right. For the most part, it's standing up straight. If I were to just wrap my wire around my plier without making that bend first, my loop's just gonna be like leaning off to the side a little bit, if that makes sense. And then you gotta go back and fix it. But that is the first half of our earring. And so then we are gonna make, in just a second, we're gonna start on our second pair. If you need to take a break, now is a great time to do that. I know that if you're new to making jewelry, sometimes our hands get tired. Even now, my hands get tired, my fingers cramp up. Maybe you gotta go to the bathroom, maybe you need a drink, maybe you need a snack. Now's the time to do it. We will be back in just a second. We'll make our other earring and then we're gonna make our ear wires. I'll see y'all in a minute. Welcome back, guys. Hope you enjoyed your little break. I did. Took a sip of water. And now I am ready to go. My hands are rested and ready to do some more wrapping. Just to kind of recap what we've done, we made the first half of our earring pair. We made a little wacky wrap tiger's eye earring, and this, like I've talked to you guys about in the beginning, it's one of my favorite styles of earrings to make. It's one of my favorite ways of wire wrapping. I think it's just fun and cool, and it's kind of unique. I don't know who came up with it. I don't know if Susan came up with it, but I took it and I made it my own, and I have like fully expanded on it, and it is now Laura's wacky wrap, but I'm pretty sure it's from Susan's brain. But so we'll give credit to Susan, or give credit where credit's due. So now we are gonna make the second half of our earring. So again, we're gonna use this 20 gauge Colorcraft wire that we've been using. I love this brown tone, you guys. It's just a rich nice brown tone. It's not, you know, it's kind of, there's something, it's got a copper feel to it, but it's also got like an antique feel to it, which is just not something that you see very often. And this Colorcraft wire is really high quality wire, that set, the brand that we have. And so I can work with it. I don't know if you guys noticed when I was making this, that first earring, that there were no nicks in the color. There were no, the color wasn't flaking off at all, which is really kind of hard to find in a coated wire. You know, all these Colorcraft wires are coated, but when you have a high quality coated wire, it's not something that to worry about really. Would I hammer this with a chasing hammer? No, but I can do a lot with it. I can wire wrap with it. I can, especially if I'm working with my hands like we're doing mostly with these earrings, like the majority of this we're making with our hands, we're not making with tools. So I'm confident that I'm not gonna nick the color on this wire. And I've really, you know, I've worked with this Colorcraft wire a lot and I've never had an issue. So I feel confident in it, and I want you guys to as well. So we've got about 1.5 to 2 feet of wire. And again, we are gonna start with our smallest bead down here at the bottom. We're gonna slide that about 2/3 to 1/4 of the way down. And then we're gonna come up and around our bead with the longer side of our wire here. Making sure that we're like contouring the shape of our wire. Our bead with our wire. And to me, if I'm gonna struggle with this earring, it's this first wrap, because I don't have a lot to hold on to when I'm wrapping, and so I can have a hard time getting that wrapped around, but from here on out, it's smooth sailing for me. It's just getting those 2 coils wrapped really tightly around that wire initially, and then from here on out, I've got this to hold on to, and so I've got, you know, something to anchor against or to pull against. Now we are ready to drop our next bead down, so next size up. And then again, we're gonna come up around the bead with our wire. And then again, I'm turning my beads. I'm holding my wire still, and I'm turning my beads to get a really nice tight wrap around my bead. That one's a little loose, but that's okay. Sometimes I don't always get it as tight as I want, but that's okay. Next time, okay, now we're gonna drop our next bead down, next size up, and we're gonna come up again with our wire around our bead, and make sure that we're really contouring it. So one thing I wanted to talk about with you guys is when you're looking at your nuggets and you're kind of deciding, you've got to place it in a way that when you pull your wrap up around your bead, that sometimes, so with these nuggets, the drill hole isn't necessarily always in the middle. So there's gonna be a side that's thinner than the other side of the bead. And so you want your wrap to come up and wrap around the thinner side of the bead, because that's how you're gonna stabilize your bead. Because if you've got a tight wrap wrapped around the thinner side of your bead can't move to the bigger side, if that makes sense. So you want to make sure that you're, paying attention to the way that your bead is facing when you're doing your wrap, so that you're capturing the thinnest side and then you're stabilizing your bead. And that's what I didn't do on this one, and that's why it's wobbling like that. So then we've got our 4th bead here. And as you can see with all these other samples that I made, this is something that you can, expand and make. You can make bigger versions, you can make shorter versions, you can put loops at the bottom and make, dangles down at the bottom. I've got bracelets on my wrist that I did with this same technique. So there's just all kinds of cool stuff that you can do. And it's not a lot, I like it because it's wrapping on a bigger scale. I do a lot of wire wrapping with micro beads, really teeny tiny beads. And every once in a while, it's cool for me to do these wacky wrap projects because I'm using much bigger beads. And it's just a different feel, a different look, and a different experience. And if you're a beginner, it's a lot easier to learn how to wire wrap with bigger beads. So this is, again, a great beginner project for you guys that are just starting out. And now we are going to add our last bead on here. We're gonna try to, at least. Okay. So this is a good example of my hole not being centered. So my hole, as you can see, is off to the side. So I'm going to make sure that my wrap captures this side, this smaller side. And that is going to make sure that my bead doesn't move around after I've got my wrap done. See? Now it's stuck in place because I've got it captured kind of on that thinner side over there. And since we went back down and did another pass with our first earring, we're gonna do that again with our second earring. So I'm gonna come back down here with my wire. Give myself a couple wraps in between. Come back down again. And this, you know, when you get to this point, it can kind of be a little bit looser if you want, because you've already stabilized everything with your first pass. So this is where you can get a little wacky if you want. And then we've got them all wrapped down there, and you've got your really cool metal poking out. Sometimes I'll go in and if I feel like I need to spread some of the, like sometimes my wires will come down around like closer than I wanted them to be, so I can go back in and like those two, I might spread those out a little bit with my pliers if I'm able to. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to without messing it up. And spread them a little bit. Okay, so now we're ready to cut this tail off down here. Go in with my very sharp flush cutters. And then we're just gonna tuck that tail in here. All right, and now we are gonna make our loop up here at the top, and I'll go through this again because it's, to me, very important. And we'll go through how to make a closed loop up here, or what I call it a pigtail loop, because you make little pigtail coils down at the bottom. But somebody was like, I think it's called a closed loop. And I was like, I like pigtails better. But whatever you want to call it, it's got pigtail curlicues on it. Okay, so we're grabbing with our round nose pliers, and then we're pushing forward with our wire. We're grabbing a hold of our beads, and we're rotating our plier up here to the top, pushing in towards my finger, and then I'm rotating it back towards myself, and then I'm coming around the bottom with my wire, like that. And then I'm going to grab a hold with my chain nose pliers here, grab a hold of that loop, and then we're just gonna give this a couple wraps down towards the top of the earring. And then we're gonna go in with our flush cutters, snip that off, and then we're gonna tuck that tail in real quick. There we go. Got a nice closed loop up there. And one of the reasons that I think it's, well, there's a couple of reasons why we did closed loops with this earring, but we'll talk about closed loops versus open loops a little bit. You know, depends on what gauge wire you're doing and how much security you need in your piece. You know, you could use a one-step looper and make an open loop, or just make an open loop with your plier. But because this 20 gauge wire is so soft, I really feel like it needed some extra stability, so that's why I did a closed loop. If I'm making loops out of 24 gauge, 26 gauge, 28 gauge, anything like that, I'm gonna use a closed loop, because that wire, those gauges are not sturdy enough as closed loops to withstand like being pulled on or anything like that. So it's kind of like on a case-by-case basis whether I'm going to use a closed loop or an open loop. But also, you know, we had to terminate these wires somewhere, and so following that, the kind of the coiling along with the rest of the earring, since we had coiling all the way down the earring, it made sense to do coiling up here at the top too, just to kind of carry that theme along with the earring. But if I've got soft wire, if I've got thin wire, I'm gonna do a closed loop, period, every time. All right, so let's talk about how we're gonna make our ear wires. This is a really fun and easy way to make yourself a bunch of simple little French hook ear wires. One of the most frustrating things to me is when I made a pair of earrings and then I don't have any ear wires. It's like, I never think to make sure before I start a project, make sure I have ear wires. I'm always like, I've got some somewhere, and then inevitably I don't. So this is a good technique, a good skill to have in your arsenal for moments like that. Also, if you're using this color craft wire or any kind of, colored wire, even copper, sometimes it can be hard to find copper ear wires. So being able to make your own that match your earrings perfectly is very helpful. So we're gonna cut ourselves a couple inches of wire, just 2 inches of this 20 gauge wire here. And then we're gonna go in with our 6-step bail shaping plier. And you can either do these together, you can, put 2 pieces of wire in here together and make them at the same time, but you don't necessarily have to, because, these are, they're not tapered, so you're gonna make the same loop, same size loop every single time. So you don't have to make them together if you don't want to. So I'm gonna show you separately how to make them. So we're gonna start with our smallest step on our bail shaping plier, and we're gonna make a loop. So I'm gonna grab the very end of my wire here with my plier, and I'm just gonna curl this into a loop, like that. And then I'm gonna grab a hold of my loop and I'm gonna rotate my pliers, and I'm gonna use the biggest step on my plier. And I'm gonna grab right above that loop with my plier. And then I'm gonna take my wire and we're gonna come around the largest step, and then we're gonna just give it a little swoosh, if you will. So you can create that little hook shape kind of with your finger. And that's something that I had to practice. I definitely had to practice the swoosh to get that down pat. But once you kind of learn how that feels with your finger and make that swoosh over and over again, it becomes something really easy to do. So before I cut the tail of this off, I'm gonna make my other one, and then I'm gonna cut them together so that they're at least terminate at the same place. So again, we're gonna grab our wire with our 6-step bail shaping pliers here, right at the very tip of the wire. So I don't want my wire poking out at all. I want it like down inside my plier. And now we're gonna rotate and make a loop with our smallest step here, like this. And then again, I'm gonna rotate my pliers so that I've got my largest step, and we're gonna come around this step with our wire. We're gonna try to turn this so that you guys can see how I do my swoop, but it's gonna be awkward. Okay, let's see. So we're gonna come around this way, and then I just like press in with my finger and swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Like that. And then now they are ready. Put them up next to each other. See how they line up? They're lining up pretty nicely next to each other, so I'm just gonna line up my loops, my little loops, here. And then I'm just gonna snip like a little bit further below my loop. So I don't want, you know, not too long. I don't want that like sticking out behind my ear, but all right, so another really important thing to do at this step before you wear these is to soften the ends of your ear wires. We sell a reaming tool, which is a really great tool, and it comes with a cut burr on the end of it. You can use that cut burr to round out the end of your wire. If you've got sandpaper or you've got a little file, you can use that to soften the edge of that, but you wanna make sure you do that before you put these on. The next thing that we're gonna do is we're just gonna attach our earrings to our ear wires. So we are gonna grab a hold of our ear wire here, and we're gonna open this little loop up with our chain nose pliers. So we're just gonna pry that open. Then we're gonna drop an earring on. And then we're just gonna close that loop up like that. And don't you love how those match, the colors match perfectly? Like, it would be really strange looking if I had these earrings with this brown wire and then I had like stainless steel or sterling silver ear wires, even gold, even copper. It would just look weird to me. So I think it's crucial to know how to make your own ear wires so that they can match perfectly. And I'm gonna take these off and I'm gonna hang our new ones up so that we can see our final product. I'll hang these on here for you guys. There we go. I think they turned out cute. I like them. They're a little chunkier than this other pair, but like I said, there's all different kinds of variations that you can make. I like kind of the squattiness of these and the chunkiness and the softness of those nuggets. So I thank you guys for joining me here today. I hope you guys enjoyed this project. And like I said, there's all different ways that you can transfer or translate this technique into different styles. I've got my bracelets here on my wrist that I made using the same technique, which is a really fun, it's one of my favorite bangle techniques. So yeah, it crosses over into all kinds of different things. If you want to learn how to do this bangle technique, I've done episodes or classes on the bangle technique as well, and you can find those on any of my social medias. If you don't follow me already, follow me on Facebook and Instagram as JTV Laura. So connect with me on there and you'll find all kinds of good content. If you don't already, make sure you tune into my streaming shows. I've got one on Monday, it's Makers Academy at 3:30. I've got a Wednesday show at 4 called Jewel School Extra, and I've got one on Friday at 4 as well, and it's called Master Maker. So don't miss any of those shows. Join me there. I hope to see you guys soon. Thank you for joining me.